Oh, hello there, Pathfinders, and welcome to the Book of the Dead. That's right, I am going to take you through some of the fantastic stuff in the Book of the Dead. Now, why are we here? We're here because Pathfinder 2 keeps releasing stuff and won't stop. In fact, they're out of control. They're so out of control that they have decided to allow you, the player, and all the games master to play The Living Dead. Yeah, that's right. I'm jumping straight to the juicy bits. So, I suppose to preface this, are there rules for playing undead hunters? Yes. Are there new items that will help your good characters slay undead better? Yes. Are there really useful guides on uh, deities relating to the undead? Yes. Are there really useful snippets of information and tidbits of facts and things that the party can use to slay undead better outside of the usual item, more environment based items such as running water, mirrors, etc.? Yes, all of that great stuff is present in this book. If you want to be a great undead hunter, this has got plenty of options. But if you want to play a ghoul, you've come to the right place. Ever had a player character who has been bitten and then died, and obviously with ghoul fever, technically come back as a ghoul? Yep, probably. It does happen. It's not unheard of at all in any situation. Except, normally, that's as far as it goes. It's just, oh, well, we know they're going to come back as a ghoul, so let's burn their body and get rid of Steve the Fighter. He is Steve the Fighter no more. Player character turns up next session with Dave the Fighter and replaces Steve. Hello, I'm a different character. And on you go. But what if Steve stayed around and Steve played a ghoul? Weird, but very cool. Now, Ghoul functions as an archetype. It's a dedication that you can take at level 2. So you have to wait till level 2 to become a ghoul, which is quite funny because at first, second level, ghouls are quite scary beasts. And that's the kind of environment where you're likely to be killed by a ghoul. And then now, come back as a ghoul. Ghouls. Um, Now, ghouls are horrible, evil, monstrous creatures, and the prerequisites for becoming a ghoul are simply this: you were killed by a ghoul, um, or ghoul fever to be specific. Now, you have succumbed to ghoul fever, dying and returning as a ghoul, an undead cursed with a never ending hunger for dead flesh that slowly overrides your reason and willpower until you would do anything for the meal you crave. Yes, the Book of the Dead. Um, in addition to the personality changes, your body changes as well. Your ears become pointed like an elf's, because some say ghouls have a connection to elves. Ooh, mysterious. Mysterious indeed. What else? Your ears become pointed and your skin grows bluish and pale. Your fingernails sharpen into claws and your teeth become razor sharp, ready to tear flesh off the bone. And your tongue grows as long and pointed as a serpent's. You gain the ghoul and undead traits and the basic undead benefits. Ooh. So you get a green card, and you get Medicare, and you get a life insurance payout because you've died. So quite sweet bonuses. Those are not the official bonuses for becoming undead. I will jump back to those in a moment to give you an idea. So your undead craving. So this is an important point. What they've done is they have tied in what they call a craving to all of the types of undead you can play, which ties back into a need that your character has whilst you are playing that character. In the form of the ghoul here, it is the hunger to eat dead flesh. So I hope you're not eating dinner while you're watching my review of Ghouls and the Book of the Dead, because rather grisly. Unless you like your steak blue. You want it still mooing at that point, I do believe. So, um, fleshy dead corpses from sapient creatures fulfill your craving. Much more than non-sapient or rotted corpses. It's important, obviously, as a ghoul, to have standards. I think we can all agree. Um, you gain 2 unarmed attacks in the brawling weapon group. Perhaps monk ghoul? Anyone? Sounds quite scary, actually, monk ghoul. Let's have a quick look at these. They are the claw attack, 1d4 slashing damage with the agile and finesse traits, and the second is the jaws that deal 1d6 piercing damage and have the finesse trait as well. So it's looking good for your monk who died at level 2 to come back as a rather ass-whooping ghoul. Now, moving on. You gain the consume flesh action. I mean, it's so obvious. Satisfying your craving is difficult. Consuming flesh temporarily sates you. Many ghoul feats have extra abilities or functions that can be used when you are satisfied, though using those abilities also causes you to lose your sated condition. You can always consume flesh, but eating more than a normal amount has no further benefit. So, consume flesh is 1 action. Good to know. You are adjacent to a corpse. Good to know. Small of a small or larger creature that died within the last hour. Ghouls, remember, have standards. 2 hours. Puh. That eventually basically means that you gain the sated condition for 1 hour when you've used that 1 action to eat a reasonably fresh corpse. I mean, it's quite a good benefit for a fighter. You kill someone, you have a snack, you feel great. Who knew? Now, replenishing consumption. A level 4 feat in this archetype tree for the ghoul. Obviously, the prereq, you have to have the ghoul dedication. When you devour corpses and sate your hunger, you also recover some of your wounds. Your your necrotized blue flesh knitting back together almost immediately. Evil. So let's have a quick chunk down on this. Once every 10 minutes, when you consume flesh, you regain 1d6 hit points for every 2 levels you have rounded up. Pretty sweet. Swift Leap, another 4th level choice. Your undead physiology allows you to leap quickly towards or away from an opponent. You leap. This movement does not trigger reactions. It's 1 action, the Swift Leap. If you are sated, you can choose to end your cessation to instead high jump or long jump without triggering reactions, as you take a quick, enormous jump before any foe can react to your movement. It's definitely looking good for Monk Ghoul. Level 6 feat. Feverish enzymes. Your claws and fangs exude an infectious enzyme related to the necrotic effects of ghoul fever. That's right, you can create more ghouls and have all of your friends become ghouls and hang out with you. Isn't that nice? So strikes with your claw or jaws deal negative damage instead of the normal damage, which is pretty juicy. On a hit, the target halves any healing it receives until the start of your next turn. The target or an adjacent ally can spend 2 interactions to squeeze the enzymes from the wound. If you are sated when you hit, you can choose to end your sation and boost your enzymes, increasing the duration to 1 minute. Now, I am already looking at these feats, and I'm already thinking, I'm going to build some ghouls. I'm going to build ghouls using these rules, and I'm going to kick in your schools with ghouls. So, I mean, in fairness, there are some in the Monsters Manual often suggestions or tweaks to monsters. Um, that's something that Pathfinder 2 does really well. But this is a real opportunity to really kind of not only create some great characters and do like whole new campaign arcs, but also put together some quite unique monsters based on some of these feats. But moving on down the ghoul tree, grave strength, another level 6 feat, nice and straightforward. Uh, it's essentially eating has made you stronger, gifting you with strange insights from the minds of the sapient creatures you've devoured, and bringing you closer to a state of undead perfection. Yes, the ghoul is misunderstood. He is merely a connoisseur diner on a path to perfection. Um, you gain the advanced undead benefits. I promise you I will jump to those. Um, in addition, you gain a plus 5 foot status bonus to your speed while you are sated. Now, Ghoul is becoming very monk like. Perhaps Monk Ghoul is the new power meta of Pathfinder 2. Who knew? You do now. You've watched this video. Don't take me seriously on that. I'm not suggesting that actually you should definitely all play Ghoul monks, but I think the combination would be pretty savage. Um, Paralyzing Slash. This is a level 8 feat option, which is 2 actions to enact. You have to have taken feverish enzymes. Your enzymes can paralyze your foes rather than merely making it harder for them to heal their wounds. Strikes with claw or jaw. If you hit a living non-elf creature, it becomes paralyzed unless it succeeds a fortitude save against your class DC or your spell DC, whichever is higher. Regardless of the results of the save, the creature is temporarily immune to paralyzing slash for 24 hours. A creature that becomes paralyzed can attempt a new save at the end of the paralysis. At the end of each of its turns, so only at the end of its own turn. So it still loses the turn, which is quite nice. And the DC cumulatively decreases by 1. It goes down by 1 for those who struggle to use the word cumulatively, like I just did. Now, we press on because we have Sickening Bite, another level 8 option for your delectation unalived. Your saliva causes severe nausea and mild fever in the living, weakening them so that you can more easily finish them off. When you critically hit a creature with your jaws, the creature is sickened 1. Nasty. If you are sated, you can end your cessation to make the target sickened 1 on a regular hit instead. Now that is pretty sweet. Level 10 feat coming up called Glutton for Flesh. Delightful. This one's prereqs are just that you have the ghoul dedication. It's not tied to another tree. Most of these aren't, to be fair. It's only that paralyzing slash so far that has been. You have developed a capacity to store more flesh within your gaunt body. If you consume while sated, you become fully sated. You stay sated for 3 hours, after which you become sated for 1 hour. If you're fully sated when an ability would end your sation, you cease being fully sated, but remain sated. Oh, okay, that's nice. So yeah, you get double bubble on those abilities that give you extra oomph if you take this feat at level 10, which is pretty good. If you have grave strength, you gain plus 10 feet bonus to your speed when fully sated, instead of the 5 feet. And then we jump to feat at level 12, Corpse Stench. Nice. Your body exudes an overwhelming scent of decay in a 10-foot emanation, so putrid that it nauseates creatures within range. Any creature that starts its turn in the aura must succeed a fort save based on your class or spell DC, whichever is higher, or be sickened 1, plus slowed 1 on a critical fail. Pretty savage. While within the aura, the creature takes a -2 circumstance penalty to saves against disease and to recover from the sickened condition. A creature that succeeds after this save is temporarily immune to corpse stench for 1 minute. Yeah, there you are. Now, that obviously runs to level 12 and is an archetype. So it's not something that you bolt straight onto a character. You can't choose it at level 1. But other archetypes are available. There is the ghost archetype, so if you die, you can come back as a ghost. There is a lich archetype. There is a mummy archetype. Mummy! There is a vampire archetype and there is a zombie archetype. But there is a new ancestry, and that ancestry is all bones, all the time. Down a dark, dark stair, in a dark, dark house, some skeletons lived. So skeleton adventurers were usually skilled and powerful in their former lives. Through unremitting force of will or extraordinary circumstances, their ego and ideals persist, even in death. So, level 1, you can play a skeleton, which is pretty funny. We've got the usual ancestry rundown. So you might work harder than most to prove you're a capable and distinct individual. There's some quite funny jokes about how skeletons are the most rubbishy rubbish of all the undead. If you've played Skyrim, they're a joke. If you've watched Jason and the Argonauts, they're not that great. If you've played D&D in any edition or Pathfinder, skeletons are some of the classic low-level monsters. And it's not until you get the heightened versions where they have intelligence and those kind of things, like they become slightly more challenging. But your run-of-the-mill mindless skeleton is a jump, 9 times out of 10. So I quite like the fact that you work harder than most to prove you're capable and distinct individual. I'm not like the rest of them. I've got brains. Don't tell that to the zombie. He'll try and eat them. Wade into danger with little regard for the safety of your undead body. Yes, well, you know, the flesh is weak after all. Desperately seek the acceptance of the society you once moved through with ease. Yeah, it's quite hard being dead and then not dead, because living people tend not to like you anymore. Others probably assume you're the servant of a necromancer, working to advance their evil agenda. Have difficulty empathizing with you because you're dead. Regard your undeath with either pity or envy, which I quite like. Physical description. Aside from the complete lack of flesh and organs, skeletons vary widely in appearance, reflecting the broad diversity of all living beings. They can be tall, short, or anywhere in between. Skeletons of creatures with horns, wings, or tails retain them, although they're usually useless in their skeletal state. Now, there's a bit of a rundown on the Society of Skeletons. Now, it's a rare ancestry, so it is GM caveat. You will have to bribe us with cookies. But your base hit points are 6. Your base size is medium. Standard speed of 25 feet. Your ability boosts are dexterity, charisma, and free. So pick and choose as you wish. Your ability floor is intelligence. And you speak common and Necril. And then you have a selection of other languages as normal. Pretty normal stuff. Alignment and religion. So this is important, people. While undead are almost always evil, some intelligent skeletons manage to stave off the corruption of negative energy that powers them. Other than the tendency to become twisted towards evil over time, skeletons typically lean towards the alignments of their creator or their former selves. Skeletons without any particular loyalty or allegiance tend towards neutral evil alignment, or neutral if they can stave off the effects of evil. Skeletons who embrace their undeath often worship gods of death, such as Ugathoa, while those who resist it typically look towards gods of life and redemption, accepting deities without particularly zealous anti-undead dogma, such as Shailin, are popular amongst those who wish to fight against their destructive influences and become something greater than the purpose for which they were created. So you don't have to be an evil undead, which is brilliant, isn't it? I mean, let's be clear. Having the opportunity to play something as unique as that, but having it absolutely pigeonholed into a slot where in 90% of people's games you couldn't do anything with it, would be really pants. So the fact that they've taken that move and just kind of gone, well, just, carry on as you were, and giving people the freedom to create characters, which is Pathfinder's strongest suit. It doesn't, hog tie you into, no, this is how it is, it can't be any different, there can't be any variance. It's much freer and much more creative. So can you be an evil skeleton? Yes. Do you have to be? No. Some example names: Clatterjaw, Creaker, Doorstop, Final Sacrifice, Lectern, Mace Fodder, it's pretty mean. Sixth Lancer, i.e. the sixth Lancer that died that you resurrected as a skeleton to serve your evil purposes, who then legged it because they happened to be a lawful good champion, and you didn't realise that when you resurrected them, they were so egotistically manic that they clung to their individuality and went, no, I will not serve your evil purposes. I will return to my temple as a skeleton and continue to be a champion of good. Ha ha! Now, they have heritages, much like all the other ancestries, that kind of flavour them out. Fodder skeleton. Humans and those who are physically closest to them are the favoured material of necromancers. Wise words. They are readily available and their physiology has been studied the most extensively, so these skeletons can be easily mass-produced. Despite their name, fodder skeletons make rather mobile foot soldiers due to how efficiently they transfer necromantic energy within their bodies. You have a base speed of 30 instead of 25. Then we move on to the compact skeleton. That's right, the hatchback model of the undead. For tasks that require a lighter touch, gnome, goblin, and halfling remains are more suitable. These smaller, nimbler skeletons fit well in a travelling chest to avoid detection. That's right, you can smuggle in a member of the party as a pile of bones in a suitcase. You gain, you're small instead of medium, and you gain the quick squeeze feat, even if you aren't trained in acrobatics. Tight spaces, not tight enough to require the squeeze activity, aren't difficult terrain to you. And then you've got sturdy skeleton. Certain hazardous conditions are not suitable for the average skeleton, so a necromancer might choose to reanimate the bones of a dwarf or an orc, for example. You have 10 hit points instead of 6, and you gain the Die Hard feat. That's right, you become Skeleton Bruce Willis. Boom. Next character, Skeleton Bruce Willis. Then you have Monstrous Skeleton. Inhuman skeletons are often created of both their deadly physical attacks and their terrifying appearances. Beasts, monstrous humanoids with stranger skeletons tend to be the centerpiece of the collection of any skilled necromancer. obviously. Um, you gain a claw, horn, tail, or wing unarmed attack that deals 1d6 damage. A claw deals slashing damage, horns, piercing, and tail or wings, bludgeoning. This unarmed attack is in the brawling group and has the finesse and unarmed traits. Uh, now, we then jump into ancestry feats. Level 1 feat, as in life, so in death. Specific memories of your old life are hard to hold on to, but you know things without remembering why. You gain the adopted ancestry feat. You can choose any ancestry, but is likely to be one that matches both your skeleton heritage and who you were in life. As long as your body is completely covered by armor or clothing, you do not have to attempt deception checks against creatures' perception DCs to successfully impersonate as a member of that ancestry. This is a non-magical disguise that doesn't protect against divination. This disguise doesn't provide any benefit against a creature actively attempting a perception check against you. So that's a pretty cool one. You can be a bit kind of like smuggling yourself through town as a human skeleton in a human settlement with that feat, for example. Collapse. Obviously, I've made the joke about putting you in a suitcase. Here it is. Now, it's a reaction once per 10 minutes. An enemy strike against you is a critical hit. You collapse into a pile of bones, mitigating the worst of the damage you would have taken. And the trigger attack deals only the normal amount of damage for a hit, not double damage for a crit, basically. Any other effects caused by a critical hit still occur. While collapsed, you're flat-footed and can't act except to stand, which reforms you into a skeleton in a standing position. Very, very amusing. I do like that. Play dead. You lie prone and pretend to be an ordinary skeleton. As long as you don't move or take any actions requiring anything other than your mind, you appear dead. To see through your ruse, another creature must succeed at a check against your deception DC, either by seeking or using recall knowledge. This ability doesn't work against creatures that already know you're an animated undead, unless you have changed your appearance. Undead empathy is another option at level 1. You can use diplomacy to make an impression on mindless undead or make simple requests of them. As long as there aren't living creatures nearby, they usually let you speak. If the undead creature currently is in the thrall of a creature whose level is higher than yours, they typically need a critical success on diplomacy checks. Nice and easy. Level 5, the next jump up point for ancestry feats. Past life. Flashes of your life become clearer and more frequent, allowing you to apply skills you developed while alive. You become trained in a skill of your choice and gain the additional lore feat for a lore subcategory tied to your previous life, which I quite like. Well armed. There's a little pun in here. It's one action. Your detachable limbs offer flexibility. You interact to remove an arm and wield it with the other one. Increasing your reach by 5 feet for any one-handed weapon held in that arm. If your next action is a strike with that weapon, creatures that were outside of your reach that you can now hit are flat-footed against your first attack, as you catch them by surprise, basically, by popping your old arm off and whacking them with the sword still in the other hand. A genius maneuver. You don't have to have a free hand while holding the arm. Because it's got a hand on the end of it. You can interact to reattach the arm while holding it. Bone Missile, which essentially is you sacrificing a couple of hit points to crack a rib and throw like a throwing knife at someone effectively, which is quite funny. Rejuvenation Token. You tie yourself to the material plane by implanting a piece of your consciousness into a weapon, piece of armor, or other item that's precious to you. As long as this object is intact, even if your body is destroyed, you can be restored to the exact state you were in the last time you made daily preparations with this object in your possession. The soulbound object can be used as a special focus for raise dead, resurrect, or similar magic. This warps the spell to bring you back in your skeletal undead state rather than bringing you back to life. Pharasma can't prevent you from returning when the spell is modified in this way. When you return, you permanently lose a memory that was precious to you, in addition to any other side effects of the spell that brought you back. Your soulbound object becomes inert until you spend 1 week of downtime to anchor yourself to it again, further fragmenting your mind. So these classes, these options for playing undead, they're not great for beginners. There is an expectation of role play. The penalty being you lose a memory. There's going to be plenty of cheese-mongering, min-maxing kind of chumbers out there that basically just kind of go, so, means nothing to me. I can just absolutely max my stats. Role play is for losers. I just roll dice and win all the time. And there's going to always be plenty of people like that in any gaming community because that's min-maxing cheese. But the fact that the kind of the emphasis is put on, there should be some role play element of loss and fragmentation is quite a cool move by Paizo to say, hey, guess what? When we say role-playing games, we mean that there is a role to play while you're rolling dice, because it's a role-playing game. So I like that. I think that's pretty sweet. Skeletal transformation, skeletal commander, necromantic heir, as in like heir to the throne heir. Now that's obviously jumping right up to 17. I'm not going to run down all of them, but it is a fully fleshed out, the irony, unfleshed out character option that is very much in line with all the other ancestry options you've got out there. The vampire archetype, for example, is one that puts you in a particularly unique spot with other options that are presented to you. And again, much like the Ghoul being an archetype, it ties in at level 2. But you can already see from this book that there are some really unique options for you as parties, for you as players, for you as game masters. I think I'm going to obviously do another video about this, but I really wanted to jump into this section because I know amongst my own gaming friends, and that's based on 3rd edition D&D through to 3.5, all the way through Pathfinder 1 to where I am now as a player in Pathfinder 2. There has always been that drumbeat of, wouldn't it be cool to do an undead party? Wouldn't it be cool to be able to play this unique kind of ancestry option? And Paizo have finally kind of got a really solid, workable crack of the whip at it. Now in 3.5 they had a thing called level adjust, and they did open up in 3.5 the option to play things like vampires with I think it was a +2 level adjust, which basically meant in 3.5 D&D parlance, if the party were all level 5 normal characters, you would be a level 3 in your class vampire, because they deemed that the full chat abilities they gave you pulled you up to that kind of equivalency in level. So you would have less hit points. Your base attack and things like that will be lower. But I think from memory, you got like +6 to your strength modifier from memory. We're going back a fair whack to 3.5, so don't quote me on that. But it was a real big kind of wallop of stat strength adjustment. The great advantage that Pathfinder 2 has is that because it is bleeding out abilities, see my little pun there about vampires, it's bleeding out abilities over levels through feats, that they're able to stop that whole issue of, here's all of the abilities of a vampire at level 2. and watch the rest of the party go, well, we can't turn into a swarm of bats. We can't mist form and go under that door. We're trapped. Whereas here, as you build up through these dedications, you start to kind of unlock and then surpass what is the standard atypical baseline of the monster. So with the Ghoul, we saw that if you went all the way to 12th level in terms of feat picks from that archetype, you were a lot powerfuler than a regular Ghoul. But that's cool because you're no fool. You're a hero Ghoul. Vampire is much the same. The options, the only prerequisite for vampire, by the way, is you were killed by a vampire drinking your blood. Um, Clinging Climber, Manipulative Charm, Nocturnal Kindred. That's a level 4 option, Nocturnal Kindred. You're trained in nature is the prereq. You have an innate connection with other creatures of the night. And some of them understand you. You can ask questions or receive answers from and use diplomacy with bats, rats, and wolves. You also gain +1 circumstance bonus to make an impression on such creatures. Once per day, you can cast Animal Allies, Pathfinder Secrets of Magic, page 89, as a divine innate spell, using your class DC or spell DC, whichever is higher. The creature it summons are bats, rats, and wolves at 5th level, and every 2 levels thereafter, the spell is heightened by an additional level to a maximum of 9th level when you're 19th level. So you can already see, oh, hang on, I'm going to do one more from Vampire. Daywalker. Blade. Yes, that's right. Obviously, my previous next character was going to be Bones McLean, Bruce Willis as a skeleton. However, now I'm going to play Blade. Level 6 feat, so it takes you some time to toughen up to the power of the sun. Though a profane pledge or through a profane pledge or bloodline quirk, you can tolerate the sun's light. You gain the advanced undead benefits, page 44, and can't be destroyed by sunlight. This doesn't prevent you from becoming slowed by exposure to the sun, but it does give you those options. Now, obviously, the Book of the Dead has many, many, many more options in it. This is really just jumping straight in to the bit that I was most excited about. And I also chose Ghoul instead of leading in with something like Vampire because I don't want to read you all the rules for all the cool new things. And Ghoul seemed like a great fit to kind of give you an idea of what was in it without it being necessarily everyone's go-to choice. Skeleton, again, is really important because being able to play that as a level 1 ancestry is super awesome. And again, as I'd mentioned at the start of the rundown, there are plenty of options for regular non-undead player characters. This whole book is framed around what can traditional parties use, take advantage of, archetypes, backgrounds that include things like grave robber, those kind of things. You've got a great archetype called Undead Hunter, which is basically like being Buffy the Vampire Slayer or Van Helsing. You've got those options. But playing Undead, having these options to suddenly have something cool happen, you're playing a slightly more horror-themed, Ustalav-based kind of, things that go bump in the night campaign. Early on, someone gets got by a ghoul. They come back as a ghoul. The party carry on. Later down the line, you've got to maybe level 5 or 6. One of you gets killed horribly by a vampire drinking his blood, but he comes back as a vampire. And suddenly you've got, Steve the ghoul fighter, and you've got Pete the barbarian vampire, and suddenly the party's got this whole new dynamic. Do they have to be evil? No. Will they have to wrestle with the inner kind of machinations of negative energy that try and drive them into the kind of darkest pits of hell? Yes. Can they overcome that through camaraderie, fellowship, Gandalf, because I said fellowship, Of course they can. You get the ultimate redemption arc. Ghost is explicitly built on unfinished business. You don't disappear as a ghost until you have dealt with something that is keeping you in the land of the living. You have to finish what you started before you can be released to the boneyard. So there are these brilliant options that can create whole new characters. Really simple example of a character who can be allowed to operate to some extent within a society, that can operate with a party. a, like a backstreet surgeon. So like the doctor in town that everyone goes to because they're a mobster or they're a criminal or they're one of those kind of untoward people who don't want to go into the Temple of Sarenrae, for example, with a load of knife wounds because they got in a fight gambling in a gambling den and murdered someone. So they don't go there, they go to a backroom surgeon. Who's the backroom surgeon, I hear you say? He is a vampire who takes payment in blood, not in gold. Is he evil? No. He basically provides a service. You could use all the healing feats to get that kind of non-magical healing. You could take alchemists so that you could brew healing potions. You could then go down that path where you don't use any magical healing because you can't channel positive energy, but you can take payment from people who need treating from injuries. A guy stumbles in with a knife wound, needs healing, you provide that healing to him, but before that, the agreement is you drink some of his blood. And you don't have to bite him because he has wounds. Hey presto, you've got a character who has a real hard edge and a real unique flavour who can still operate with a traditional party. He doesn't have to be evil. He has this thing that he does in the town, and the town, some people are aware of him, others keep his secrets to kind of protect him because they know how beneficial he is, especially because he doesn't take payment in gold. And if you are like like someone who gambles and murders people, and you're a thug for a local mafia kind of mafioso crime boss, you're not going to want to spend coin if you don't have to. There you go. Easy character, straight out of the gate, using this book. It's brilliant. I love it. Follow-up video. I promise you I am going to look at the good guy options. I am going to look at some of the positive kind of undead hunter archetypes and things like that because it's important. But this bit got me excited. So, hope you've enjoyed the video. Stay classy, stay safe, and I shall see you for round 2 of Book of the Dead. Bye!